Hey there. Let me Dr. Rock here. I am a lifestyle medicine physician, and I am the lead physician and CEO at Rock Your Life. And I'm here for my weekly live stream. It's so nice to see you. If you're joining live, if you're watching recorded, it's always a pleasure to have you here. This week, I don't have my prop. Oh, yeah, I do. Actually, take that back. Here's my prop. My prop. This week, I'm going to be talking about our relationship with our devices and something that I have been struggling with, I would say, ever since these devices came out. And I bet you I'm not alone in saying that. So, first, I want to kind of frame when I say device addiction. Okay, and I use that word addiction. I want to I want to frame that. What does addiction mean? Well, addiction is sustained use despite adverse consequences. Sustained use despite adverse consequences. You keep using something even though it's causing you problems in your life. And so for me, I definitely would say I have device addiction. Or I yeah, have had device addiction. And I'll start with a story. Actually, this was maybe 8, 9 years ago, maybe. I don't remember exactly. And I was at a concert, and my favorite band, Wilco. If you haven't heard their music, highly recommend. And we were all the way in the front. There were, thousands of people at this concert. It was in a big stadium, and I had my phone out. I was trying to get the perfect shot, right, for my social media. Uh, and my friend starts tapping me on the shoulder. He said, "Rock, rock." And I was like, "What? What is it? What is it?" And unbeknownst to me, I didn't even realize the lead singer was calling me out in front of all these people for being on my phone and sticking it up in the air. And he was basically having a moment where he was describing my addiction to the whole stadium, and I didn't even realize it. And gosh, after that, it sort of hit me hard. And I at the time, I was constantly using these apps, constantly like trying to, I don't know, post my life and constantly getting like pulled in. Now, this was 8 or 9 years ago. This was before people were posting videos, and I mean, these things have become way more. So I start with that to tell you that this is something that I have struggled with. Um, and there's a paradox, right? Because these modern devices are incredible tools. They are supercomputers. The average supercomputer 30 years ago didn't have the computing power that we now have in our pocket. So that's how incredible these devices are. And you know that they can do unbelievable things. With AI now, they can do even more unbelievable things. And they are designed to capture our time and our attention. And our time and our attention are our most valuable commodities. So the device manufacturers and the software companies are solely focused on keeping you on the device. Okay, so there is a disconnect between what is best for us and what is kind of best for the shareholders of these companies. And that doesn't mean that we're stuck then, okay? And so I want to today offer you some practical tips on how you can change your relationship with your phone. Okay, so we'll start with just you sort of reflecting on your current relationship with your device. So, first ask yourself why, well, do you have an unhealthy relationship with your device, right? Is is it something that you are using too much of? Is it, go back to that definition of addiction? Is it something that you're continuing to use despite adverse consequences in your life? And that could be like, how does that show up? Like for me, it and for many, it shows up with disturbed sleep, either getting to bed much later than we anticipated and not having as restful sleep because the light from the phone is really preventing that. The light from the phone, our eyes don't know the difference between the light from the phone and the light from the sun, for example. So what happens is our natural production of melatonin, which is the hormone that helps us fall asleep and stay asleep, it gets blunted because the brain thinks it's daylight, you know, and in doing that, you wake up the next day feeling tired and groggy. You may not make the best choices. You may decide to skip your workout or eat something. When we're tired, our ability to sustain willpower is depleted. Our ability to we tend to then reflex to things that are um, kind of more soothing and numbing. And so that is the dilemma. So ask yourself, do you have any issues with your device right now? Are you using your device unintentionally? And is it keeping you from being present in your life? That's for you to sort of reflect on. And one way you can just kind of quantify how much time you're spending on your device is by using the apps or that are built into the phone. So if you have an iPhone or an Android, there is an area that you can go to, basically tells you how much time you're using on the device and to like what you're doing on it. Like how much time are you spending on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and whatever else you're using, and how much time are you spending on, like, Google Maps, which I would argue is not a bad thing, right? If it's helping you navigate, that's a good thing. So it's not that all phone use. I remember, like, when I would commute, used to have a, like, 40-minute commute to work, and so both ways there and back, it was sort of like adding, that hour and 20 minutes to my screen time. It's that's okay, right? It's really like looking at that and dissecting it and saying, okay, how much time did I actually spend on things that um now your job or your work or your business or whatever you're doing may necessitate that you use these apps and certain apps like social media. It's really a question of how you're using it, right? Are you using it as a tool? Are you using it uh, because you're creating something and you want to get your message out and you want to interact with people and kind of grow community in that way? Or are you mindlessly consuming? And all of us do some mindless consuming. I do some mindless consuming. It's not wrong. It's just being aware of how much you're doing, and um yeah, and whether or not it's contributing to a more fulfilling life or actually hindering that. Okay. So after you check and sort of checked in with yourself, um if you are in a place where you think, yeah, actually, Dr. Rock, I do have a problem with my device, and perhaps I have some degree of addiction. Well, what can you do? So I tell you, after that concert, I did a lot of self reflecting. The first thing I did is I deleted uh, certain apps off my phone. I deleted Instagram and Facebook off my phone. Didn't cancel my accounts. I think I thought about doing that at the time. And I realized that, I was mostly using them on my phone. So it just deleted the apps. And it was a good pause for me. It's a good pause for me. So it actually created this sense of freedom. So if this is something you're struggling with, then consider taking a pause. Consider doing that. Um, because when we use, tools, when we use these devices as tools, they're very powerful. And when they creep into our life and steal our time and attention, they can really hinder us. So I did. I have obviously reintegrated myself to social media. It's the irony that I'm giving a live stream right now, and if you're watching it on YouTube or Facebook or one of those platforms, and it's not so it's something. It's a part of our modern society. It's a part of our modern society. It is sort of weaved into the fabric of our society. There really isn't, I mean, there are very few people that don't interact with social media in some way. I tell you, my wife is one of them. She doesn't have accounts on any social media platform that I know of. And that is intentional. I think years ago, she told me, you know, when I use these platforms, generally they don't make me feel good and they take away my time. And so why would I put my energy into something like that? And if that is the case for you, then, it's a hard conversation maybe to have with yourself. But I do feel like there's a balance and a medium where you can use these platforms and actually make this powerful tool a functional part of your life. So, what are some of the practical tips that I use? Okay. And I use a lot of them. So I'm going to get into them. Okay. So the first one is, I mentioned you can delete apps off your phone. Eventually, you may want to put them back on your phone and then reintegrate into the experience of going into them. Um, I have found, so number one, I've found app blocker is a really great way to limit distractions. And the one I use is Opal. Is it Opal or I don't even know. Opal, yeah, OPAL. There's a bit of a fee. There's a free version of it, but you can't do nearly as much. It's not super expensive, but there is, much like everything else, there's a fee associated with using it, but it saves me hours and hours and hours a week. I know because I've seen from when I started using it, um, how my screen time, like within a week or two, it plummeted by a few hours every day. And so, and I still get the urge to go into apps. It's very customizable. So you can set up blocks of time. You can say, like, oh, I'm doing work from X hour to X hour, and I want to limit these apps. And then the evening, I'm spending time with family. And so I want to limit these apps. You can even set like how difficult it is to snooze the block. So you can go into the app and snooze the block. But if you want deep focus, then you can give yourself the option when you're making that block, that specific time block, that you can't snooze it. That's not possible. You can't change the parameters of that during that block. You can change it afterwards or before. So let's say you decide that's not working for you, then that next day you can say, okay, I'm going to allow I'm going to allow snoozing in that block. But very customizable, and there's a bit of iteration and figuring out like what works for you, and that'll not always be the same, and you may block certain apps and then realize that you're then gravitating towards other apps. I love it because you can block websites too. You can block um like Google News, which is one of my you know guilty pleasures, which I don't really, I mean, I never even really feel better after reading a bunch of headlines. And yeah, so that app blocker, okay. Turning off notifications, or turning off non-essential notifications. You don't have to turn off all notifications, uh, but to ask yourself, like, what do I actually need to be notified? Do I need to be notified when somebody likes a post, or so I have most of my notifications turned off. I allow notifications for text message, um, and I don't know. I don't allow many notifications on my phone, to be honest. And there's different ways you can set it too. So it's like you can have notifications that kind of go in the background that don't pop up, and then you can periodically check those. Or you can have only certain essential things pop up. Like if you use Slack or Teams or something like that for work, and you need to be available for work, then by all means set those notifications to be on. And ask yourself, what is the benefit of my phone vibrating and buzzing and binging and getting me? Again, they've been designed to do that. They've been designed to steal our time and attention because we are the product. And you can very easily turn those things off. So um, that kind of segues into the next thing, which is focus mode, or do not disturb. There's basically different modes now on both Android and iOS where you can customize those. So if you have, again, it's kind of like the app blocker. If you have a period of the day where you want to get focused work done, or you're at work, or you're with family, or whatever, you can make sure that you won't get um, notifications or calls or whatever. Now, you can bypass certain people. Can, like, my wife's calls always go through even when I'm on a do not disturb. I have a I have my best friend from medical school. We talked last week, and he said, "I can never reach you now." And he calls me sometimes when he's commuting. He lives in Texas, and he calls me sometimes when he's commuting. And since I've had do not disturb on during the day, and then I realized that he's not on the exception list, so I added him to the exception list. So my family, my wife, my parents, my in-law, like certain people that I have put on my exception list, so their calls will come through. And then the rest, it's not like you're never going to see that someone called you or texted you. Like, we are picking up these devices constantly. So that is okay. So do not disturb. You can also set limits on app usage. So you can go into the settings. Like, again, this is in the screen time in iOS, and there's something very similar on Android. And you can say, okay, for social media apps, and you can define which apps that includes. I'm only going to be allowed to use it for an hour a day. And then after an hour, this little pop-up comes up and says you've reached your limit for the day. Now, it's very easy to say I want to override it for a minute or 15 minutes, or override it for today, but it's a step. It's an extra step. So it gives you that moment of pause, that moment of pause. Okay. Which brings me to my next tip, which is, how do you introduce that moment of pause? There's a really great book that came out several years ago. This woman, Catherine Price, she's uh, she's a writer for New York Times. She wrote a book, How to Break Up with Your Phone, and it was like a 30-day plan. I remember some of the tips in there are not practical for everyone. Like, part of the 30-day plan is actually to do a 48 digital detox. Um, that's not practical for everyone. For some people, for their work and family, like, they can't completely be disconnected. Although sometimes that's, like, the story we tell ourselves, so think about that. But my favorite aspect of the book was just bringing more mindfulness into your device usage. So, asking yourself, when you pull out your phone, "Why am I using this? Like, why did I pull it out?" And being intentional then about using it. Like, "Oh, I pulled it out to check my text messages," or "I pulled it out to respond to this certain email," or "I pulled it out," right? And so there's a reason, or "I pulled it out because I wanna look at TikTok for 30 minutes." And that I wanna do that because I enjoy it, and that's okay too, There's nobody I'm not saying that's wrong. It's just being intentional about how you use your time. And so, how do you bring that pause in? Years ago, and I met somebody at a conference, who was the chief well-being officer, previously at Google, and he told me about an initiative they started there called GPause. GPause, and GPause was, um, that to take a pause with your device. And what they did is they handed out these stickers that would go on the back of the phone, and they were tactile, they were raised. And so, if I remember correctly, it was almost like, the Chrome logo, but like with the colors, but a little different. And anyway, the idea was when you put your hand in your pocket, which we often do, we're just pulling out our phone because we don't often think about it. It's sort of happening mindlessly, is that you would feel that, and it would remind you, oh, like, this is my opportunity to take a pause. And other kind of methods for this I've heard are like wrapping a rubber band around the phone. I don't do this, but I mentioned this as an option. What I do actually, which works well for me when my children are home, like in the evening, and I intentionally don't want to be modeling addictive behavior, using the device. I want to be modeling mindfulness and being present with the family. And so several years ago, asked my kids when they see me using the phone, when they're with me, to ask me, "Daddy, are you doing work or are you addicted?" So, and they still ask. My daughter in particular, she learned that was important to me, and she asks me that. It's my prompt to put the device away. Well, sometimes I am, sometimes there's something urgent. It's like, no, I got to respond to so and so, or like, I'm ordering groceries or whatever it is. It If it's intentional and it's something I have to use the device, I'll tell her. If it's addiction, if it's like, no, I've just gotten caught up in something and I'm scrolling, I will say that. I will say, yeah, you're right. I'm addicted. And then it prompts me to put the device away, which gets me to my next tip, which is putting your device away and kind of where your device lives, right? So I think I learned very early on, after I started resetting my relationship with my device, that one of the things that was hindering was my sleep. And I think that's true for many people. I think these devices will keep people up. I think they will affect quality of sleep. And so there's a very easy thing that everyone can do. You can do this today. And I love it because it's an action that is easy to do and has a very big impact. And I think those are the best low hanging fruit actions that we can do in our life. And so, what is that action? It's actually moving your phone away from your bed. It's putting it in an adjacent room. In my case, we have, a bathroom next to our room, connected to our room, and so I put it in there. Um, but you might put it completely away, depending on your situation. And I always say to people, your phone should go to bed ideally at least an hour before you go to bed, and it should sleep in a different room. So ask yourself, like, where is my phone right now? And am I using it at night? And am I using it first thing in the morning? And as many of us do that, it's like the first thing we do. The last thing we do at night is looking at the phone. And then the first thing we do in the morning is pick up our phone. And so just controlling all of this is about controlling your digital environment, right? Controlling your physical environment so that you have, because if I had to just use willpower, that's not possible. Not with this addictive device, right? So this is why you use the strategies that are built in to the device. Um, you may need to get an alarm clock. And there's nothing wrong with that. Actually, the alarm clock I have now is it plays kind of beautiful nature music and got birds chirping in the morning, and there's a light that sort of illuminates a little brighter. You can find these pretty inexpensive now on Amazon or wherever you might buy products online. And so, think about getting an alarm clock, especially if your phone usage is, because that's the argument I will hear from people. Oh, I use it as my alarm. I use it as my alarm clock. Okay. Well, you know, we lived in a world for many years where people got up without speaking of alarms, I think using your phone alarms is also another useful strategy. So I have an alarm that goes off at 8 o'clock every night. 8 o'clock every night, it says, be the best version of yourself. Put your phone away. It's a reminder that if I'm on my phone or if it's even with me, that, time for the phone to go to bed. And the other thing that happens, so that's my cue, because anytime we're developing new habits, we need something that cues us, right? What's going to remind me to do this? And so alarm on your phone is really helpful. The other thing that happens at 8 o'clock is my phone switches to black and white. So it goes from a color screen to a black and white screen. Now I'm not going to get in how to set that up. You can Google it, but on both types of devices now you can change it so that it looks like a black and white screen, and that just makes it less visually appealing. That makes it less addictive. So again, that's controlling your, digital environment. And all of these things, okay? App blockers, turning off notifications, focus mode, setting limits on app usage, putting the phone away from your bed into another room, turning the screen black and white. I mean, all of these things are ways in which you are re-exerting control over these devices, which have exerted so much control over us. They've exerted so much control over our lives, over our time and our attention. And I strongly believe that, these devices are game changing. I mean, they've changed our lives in so many positive ways, so many incredibly positive ways. How we can be connected with people now, how we can access things, information in a way that we never could before, the utility of being able to, you know, call a car when you're at the airport, or call anyone really anytime, connect with anyone around the world. I mean, they are incredible, and they are one of the biggest detriments to our health and our well-being right now in this world. And so have an honest relationship with yourself. Have an honest conversation with yourself, rather, about what your relationship is with your device. And if it's hindering you, if it's keeping you from being the best version of yourself, then start to make small changes. The phone and the charger to another room. You can do that today. It's very easy. Get an alarm clock. or put it in a room so that it's close enough that you can still hear it. I mean, that's basically what I do as well, but, um, I just happen to like the alarm clock that I got so much that I stopped setting an alarm on my phone. And, you know, over time, you can develop a very healthy relationship where you have control, where you're using it and harnessing it for all its power and all its ability, and it's not hindering you and it's not causing adverse consequences in your life. Okay. So that's all I have for now. If you are interested in leveling up your health and working with me directly, I work with individuals. I'm in 10 states, including California, New York, and Texas and Florida, and several others. I can work with you as a lifestyle medicine physician, help you take control of your health and your health behaviors and your habits, maybe help you reset your relationship with your devices if that is the underpinning of what's holding you back. And then I also run weekly health coaching groups. These are tribes where you get to connect with me and other like minded individuals who are on their journey to live their best health. And those are transformative, exciting, and joyful. And you can check out my offerings and get more information at my website, rockyourlife.com. You can also find out more information in the description below. And if you're new to this channel, please subscribe and like. And I appreciate your time and your attention. And I will see you back here next time for another live stream. And take care, everyone. Have a wonderful week.